come closer. Especially now that some folks have been here a while, you're a little bit more comfortable. Come, take the leap.
You have somebody come close.
Okay, folks, we're aware that it's probably 2 minutes early, and we may have some folks joining us. That's totally fine. But I'm gonna hand over to Gina, who will be presenting this session, and it's been great collaborating with her. And yeah, she's going to tell you more about her interesting project.
Thanks, Nicola. So, yes, this presentation is a collaboration between myself and Nicola, and I'll be talking through the presentation, and then Nicola can also come in during questions. So, I teach on the third year Environmental and Geographical Science course called Sustainability and the Environment, and there are about 75 students with a range from BSc, BA, Social BSoc Sci, and we usually have between 5 and 10 international students as well. And I teach a 5-week section on vulnerability and adaptation to climate change, where I understand vulnerability to be exposure to risk, sensitivity to that risk, and the adaptive capacity to reduce that risk. And we look quite a lot at climate risk specifically. And so I have had a session that looks at vulnerability assessment tools for the prac that lasts for the duration of the 5 weeks that I teach. And this is the second year that I've got them to do a video as part of their prac. And so what happens is they work in groups of 4 students to produce a 2 to 3 minute video. And this year they were asked to focus specifically on vulnerability to the drought, and I'll talk a bit more about that. And they use a phone to do this, and they are expected to undertake the group work as a group themselves outside of the classroom, where they use 2 vulnerability assessment tools, ranging from focus groups, interviews, transect walks, quite participatory tools. And so the aim of the prac is for the students to understand and apply concepts of vulnerability, the theoretical concepts, but also the assessment tools. How do you assess vulnerability? It's to give the students a bit of exposure to fieldwork and think about ethics and fieldwork together. And it's to also think about vulnerability that can be theoretical when looked at in class through story and personal experience, because we are all vulnerable in some way, and giving the students the ability to think about that is really important. And then this way of pulling together their understanding is really drawing on creative methods and skills to share theoretical knowledge. So in terms of the process, it covers 5 weeks, and in the first prac, we come together and we talk about vulnerability assessment methods, but we also talk about digital storytelling. And so this is where Nicola's involvement started, and she gave a lot of input on what digital storytelling is. And in each group, they were then expected to think about who they wanted to work with. And we had a wonderful range of examples, ranging from traditional healers, hairdressers, schools and water access, individuals that were doing things in their homes. So a real range of how the drought was impacting on different groups. Importantly, the groups were formed in a fairly organic way, but I emphasized very clearly to the students the importance of working with people that you don't normally work with, and that part of this exercise is to understand different perspectives on vulnerability and to use different skills. So I did give the students an opportunity to form the groups themselves, but I did go and break up some where I could see that there were little clicks happening. They then needed to make contact themselves with the people they wanted to film, and the logistics around this were quite challenging for some, because from the first prac to the second prac, there was a 3-week gap. So they needed to go and engage with the people, find the people they were going to film, do the filming and edit the film, and be back in class 3 weeks later with their short digital film. So they did that, and we talked quite a lot about consent forms. Everybody that they interviewed needed to sign a consent form, and the people they spoke to could decide whether they were happy with the video being screened on social media after they had seen it and with their material, or if they were only happy for it to be used in the classroom. They had to be happy for it to be used in the classroom because it needed to be screened there. And so that process was quite important as well. And editing the film, the students did surprisingly well, and I actually did this exercise myself 2 years ago when I first gave it to the students, because I wanted to know how to make a video, because I'd never done it before, and I was amazed at how much online support there was. We then, in the second time when we meet together, we have a film festival, and so there were 19 films, we had popcorn, we had a wonderful series of videos, and I'll talk a bit about the evaluation in a minute as well. And then prac 3, we have a whole 2-hour prac session reflecting on the process, on the learning. The individuals filled in a form before the prac session, and then in the prac session talked about their learning as well. So during the video festival, each of the groups and a group of judges evaluated each video. So the official judges were Nicola, myself, and 2 postdocs. So we had a panel of 4 people, and we had 7 questions that we assessed the videos on. And then there was the People's Prize, where each group had to submit their assessment of the other videos. And I think that was quite an important process to keep all the groups engaged in the activity. And they had 5 questions. And Nicola designed this very helpful form, so it was sort of live submission of that form, and we were capturing the data as we went. And so as the student groups, they needed to look at, was the vulnerability concept well presented with clear assessment tools? What was the use of multimedia like? Were there strong images and film clips to capture the story, and music and voiceover? And originality, and an excellent video capturing the story of vulnerability. And then they had to give an overall grade. Just a tip if you're doing this, I'd go for a specific percentage next time so we could work out the marks more easily, because working on these scales was quite challenging to then work out what the final marks were. And then as this group of lecturers or experts, the judges, we called ourselves, we had an additional 2 points that we judged the videos on. Was the point of view of the vulnerable person or group well presented, and was there strong use of images and filming? So the winners of the film was this group that you can see pictured below, and they had a wonderful video of vulnerability to drought in Gugulethu, a woman with an informal ginger beer business, and we're going to watch that 3-minute video now. But there was a People's Prize as well, which went to a group that did a short film on the SPCA and how they were dealing with the drought. And Kwezi here in the front was part of that group, and so you'll have seen him around today with his camera. So I asked if he could come back here as well and also be part of the discussion. And then interestingly enough, the Flower Sellers video was runner-up in both the People's Prize from the students and from our group of lecturer evaluations. So in the Out of the Box later this afternoon, I'll be showing this video. So if we quickly go over to the drought video.
We have used oral histories and brainstorming to find out how the water management devices have affected informal businesses in Gugulethu.
I make ginger beer. and I sell it to people. A 2 liter, I sell it for 12 rand. Like here it is now. Oh, quite a long time. My mother used to make it, and when she passed on, I carried on. Our pension is not so much, you see. Now I must wait for the first to get my pension. I depend entirely on it, Ginger. So I do my business first and my food before I do washing. If I know I'll do my washing, then I restrict myself. They are not happy. There are these houses, the shacks, and you go further down. There are steps along the road, next to the road. You'll find those steps open the whole day. There are people like us who are pensioners, who are depending entirely on their pension. They've got no children to work for them, but the government doesn't see those things, you know. They just cut off the water or whatever they want to do. And we can't understand it. Why do they restrict this water on our side? But they should do it on their side, but not on our side, because we are not misusing water. I would ask him, does he do the same thing at his place? Has he got children? And what if somebody gets sick during the night and there's no water? How would he cope? I would ask them. There's a lot of questions I could ask them. I catch the water from the gutter there.
Yeah.
When it's raining, then the water falls in there and it fills up. So I use it today to scrub my floors, to wash the carpets, you know, and sometimes when it's hot, I use it to water my flowers. It is hard, but what can I do?
Through oral history and brainstorming, we've discovered that the government had not consulted the community and has not supported them through the drought. Despite this, people like Mama Mohale find ways to survive.
Great, so I hope you enjoyed that video. And when we shared with the students, we then asked them to say, could you respond to these 5 questions in terms of your experience of producing the video and what you've learned? And so a lot of comments came out from the students, and I think it's really helpful for us to look at some of those. So one student said, I learned that I'm capable of doing research without the facilitation of my lecturers if I really put my mind to it. Somebody else said, I sometimes find learning at UCT can get lonely, and it's great that we could do an exercise that was fun and interactive. Another said, learning about a real-life vulnerability issue from relevant people who experienced its effects allowed me to have a deeper understanding of the concept of vulnerability as compared to just learning it through lectures. I gained skills in presenting my vulnerability knowledge in a different way rather than in an essay. From creating a video and watching other videos, I saw a wide range of people and communities that are vulnerable in different ways. Lastly, I also gained friends from being in a group with people I hadn't spoken to before. And lastly, I learned it's important to let those that are vulnerable take charge in how they want their story to be told. And these were from the individual comments, and then this picture above, you can see one of the students drawing on an A3 piece of paper. At the beginning of the sort of 2-hour reflection prac, they then had a chance to draw themselves some of what their learnings had been, and that was important to then sort of consolidate that more. In this one, we can see on the right where she said seeing other projects was very eye-opening and pretty fun to engage with. The grading process helped to look at the different aspects of content, effort, and filming process. So really including students in grading other students helped them to see it through a different lens. And then in the middle section at the bottom, the video making process, where I edited and subtitled, was different to previous academic approaches. It helped to understand how theory applies on the ground. Engaging with people felt so much more real. And then as a group, they then came together and as a group had to come up and answer quite a long list of questions, reflecting on the process, reflecting on ethics, reflecting on different members and the roles that they had played. And I think the middle one on process of fieldwork was a very important conversation that we had. Point 2 says there needs to be an exchange. Simply taking their time for interviews is unethical. And so that was an important discussion, and in some instances people were quite happy to have a video made that they could then share more widely, and in other instances they didn't want the video shared, and so both of those options were absolutely fine. But when people didn't want the video shared, they were still giving of their time and maybe not getting back. But there was also the reality of what does that mean as people in an academic environment where research is happening, and a discussion around people telling their stories and having stories heard and having that valued as well. And so the student reflections really, and there was so much to draw on, but there was a real appreciation that understanding these theoretical concepts in practice really brought them to life. And students really enjoyed the creative way of learning and sharing what they had learned. Evaluation, the video as an alternative means of evaluation was important, and I think this was interesting in terms of a lecturer's perspective, where the marks were fairly high, but they'd done this really good creative work as teams, which was important. And students, and I'm sure this is reflected in other presentations as well, value getting to know other students in the class, and how do we do this in different ways, and sometimes putting them together and letting them go out and figure out things beyond the classroom and beyond the university is really quite important. And then the real importance of moving from theory to practice was very easy for the students to understand through this video process. And as a lecturer, it can be quite hard to get that point across in a classroom setting. But when the students went out and thought about the concepts themselves, had to apply them, had to apply methods, that's when they really grappled with, well, what does this mean? Oh, I thought I understood it, and now I need to understand it a different way, which was really important. And the challenge of fieldwork and how hard that can be and how you need to be creative was really important. And so one of the bigger points that I think would be good to discuss after this is, what does it mean for lecturers? So you need to have quite careful planning in terms of how you time the activities. And for a film, I found it quite difficult because I kind of felt I needed to give the students long enough to do it, but then also to reflect on it, and ethics and rubric for assessment. But I can't under stress the importance for me of having SILT support. So I think as a university, to have a unit like SILT, for me to be able to work with Nicola, who helped me not only with thinking through what is a digital story, with helping me with Google Forms, with how to do things, how to upload students' videos, was an incredibly useful resource. And then the fact that there is so much online technical advice now means that the students can really figure out the filming part on their own, which was amazing. The first year we did it, Nicola and I were like, we'll be there for an hour session to help anybody who needs technical support. Nobody needed it. When they had a problem, they sorted it out online. And then the assessment, having peer review was really important, and then not just me as the lecturer, but having this group of us and different perspectives, and those were other people they'd encountered in the course. So my last slide is on lessons learned and linking to the Create, Connect and Care. Finding alternative means of assessment is really appreciated by the students, not only because they don't want to only write, they want to share their learning in another way, but also through this creative means, it really deepened their learning. And I felt really ensured there was participation across the whole class of 75 students, and not the engagement with a smaller group that I normally find is more active and smaller, and many students can get away with just doing the bare minimum. People really wanted to be involved in this. Connect with others, both those within the class who they didn't normally connect with, and people outside of the university, yet through a theoretical lens. And importantly, parts of, although vulnerability sounds like a negative characteristic, when we start reflecting on it, we realize we are all vulnerable, and it's through our vulnerability that we can find ways of strengthening resilience, connecting, and so that was really important. And sharing these stories, like this wonderful one from Gugulethu, where there really was a sense of, wow, despite this, this woman is resilient, she is strong, and so many of the stories had that aspect, which was really wonderful to see. And then lastly, it really was a process that enabled students to reflect on both their own and others' vulnerability, thinking about ethics that was central to the discussions we had, interweaving theoretical concepts with their own personal reflections and learning was really important. And so this is a link that Nicola's put in on student video production, and there are other resources that she has that can be drawn on further. Thank you.
Thanks a million, Gina. Folks, any questions? Hope you enjoyed the video. Any comments?
Thanks, Gina and team. Just a question on how this fits into the curriculum. So is there anything that you need to draw on in this exercise that comes from the first or second year of the curriculum? How does it articulate with the skills and knowledge that's already been built up, or are you working really without taking a look through the larger curriculum?
I've got a microphone. So in terms of the theoretical concepts, it's not something that they've dealt with in first or second year. And so I was teaching them the vulnerability concepts new, so that was new to them. They have done some field work before, so that they have been open to some of those conversations before. So the methods, I think there was a sort of basis for that, but not the theory. But maybe Kwezi could even have a brief comment. I don't know if you felt it built on or linked to other aspects of...
Sorry. I think it sort of did in a way, because in second year you learn about sustainability and sort of the whole social concept in the EGS department, and vulnerability sort of was added on to what we already obtained from the previous year, I think.
And in terms of the skills that
it wasn't really something new, but it was definitely something adding on to the knowledge that we already have. So yeah, the video part was new. That was a bit, yeah. So yeah.
Any questions on this side? Nothing.
Can you tell me what the weighting of this assignment was in the total of the course? Was it a major assignment for the students?
So it was 7%
Of the total?
of their total mark.
7%?
Yeah. It was supposed to be 5%, but then one of the other pracs, there was a problem with it, so it went up to 7%.
And were you worried that they would spend more energy on the construction of the video than dealing with the concepts? Or?
No, I think different groups probably did different amounts, and some did slightly more professional videos than others, but to me, that wasn't an issue because it was something where there was energy and excitement. So if they had the energy to try Nicola was really great on saying to them, well, this is where you get open access songs. So they were aware of some of those kind of issues. You can bring in other images. You saw this one, they sort of used text in between. Others worked with more than one person. And so some went back for a second round of fieldwork because they felt they needed more footage. Others worked with what they got. So it wasn't a problem. It was more how the story came across in the end. And that's what sort of came across in their marks, the good stories, that it wasn't about the fanciest thing, it was about who can tell the story. And that Nicola really emphasized through the input she gave on digital storytelling. That was one of their first exposures to the project. Yeah.
But also that we told them it's not about broadcast quality stuff. It's actually good if it's raw and authentic. And when we asked students if they had ever made a video before, and most of the class had actually. So it's interesting how we've got to actually take account of what students are already doing outside of the classroom. And there are just so many resources out there on how to create little video, free tools, often especially things that are mobile and free to use. And I think it's amazing what you can actually do these days with a mobile phone. And the students know about this. And it's kind of like second nature to many, many of them.
Maybe as a last, if there's no question, maybe Kwezi, do you want to say what you got out of the process?
I think the one thing I got is that video making was much more effective in terms of learning than an essay. Because an essay, you just copying and pasting stuff and you reusing. Not directly. You have more of a connection to work that you actually physically are engaged with, talking to people and understanding what their vulnerability is and how they adapt to it is much more effective than reading a paper. Reading a paper. And
Haro, yeah?
That does bring up the point whether if you had taken this field visit and written that up instead of building it up, then you shouldn't be able to copy and paste because that's your field visit. Just keeping the like for like.
So I've done the video process for 2 years, and before that, what they did is they wrote up a report instead of producing a video, and they did the fieldwork themselves. I would say the depth of learning has definitely been deeper with the video because there was such personal engagement in the process in a way that before they went and they ran these two methods with a group, and then they wrote up a essay or a report that they were not as personally connected to, whereas these videos really linked to their personal pride in the story and wanting to tell somebody else's story in a way that a written submission did not.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, it's about connecting. And it's clear that this generation connects differently to how, well, not sure where I fall in, but yeah, they're just connecting more with technology and how they use it. It also is reinterpreted, the meanings that they find within using